Have you ever stopped for a moment and wondered why, out of billions of people on this planet, you're watching this message right now at this exact second? Because the truth is, this is not random, this is not luck, and this is definitely not coincidence. Something deeper is happening behind the scenes of your life, something invisible yet powerful, something intentional. Because God does not move without purpose, and He does not allow moments like this to happened by accident. The very fact that your eyes landed on this message today means heaven already knew your heart needed to hear these words before you even pressed play. Maybe you were scrolling without thinking. Maybe you felt tired, confused, discouraged, or even forgotten. Maybe you were searching for answers you cannot explain. Maybe you did not even know what you were looking for, but somehow you ended up here. And that is exactly how God works, because sometimes God does not shout, He quietly positions you exactly where your breakthrough begins. And right now, this moment is one of those moments. You see, there are seasons when life feels ordinary, when prayers feel unanswered, when doors stay closed longer than expected, and silence from heaven feels heavier than noise from the world. But what most people never realize is that God often moves the most when everything feels still. Because silence is not absence, silence is preparation. And if you are hearing this today, it is because God is preparing something in your life that you cannot yet see, but your spirit can already feel something inside. You knows change is coming, something inside. You knows this message feels different, something inside. You knows this is not just another video. This is a signal from heaven reminding you that you are not forgotten, you are not invisible, and you are not walking alone, even when nobody else understands what you are going through, even when people misunderstand your silence, even when friends disappear and plans collapse and opportunities close. Unexpectedly, God is still writing a story through your life that is bigger than what you can see right now, because sometimes God removes what you thought you needed so He can prepare what you actually deserve. And the reason you are here today is because heaven wants to remind you that your story is not over, your waiting season is not wasted, and your pain has never been meaningless. There are battles you survived that people never knew about. There are nights you stayed strong when nobody was watching. There were moments you almost gave up, but somehow you kept going, and that strength did not come from nowhere. That strength came from God protecting you, even when you did not realize He was standing beside you. And maybe today you feel like nothing is changing. Maybe today you feel like your prayers are repeating without answers. Maybe today you feel like everyone else is moving forward while you're standing still. But what you cannot see yet is that God is positioning events, arranging people, shifting timing, and opening unseen doors that will make sense later, because destiny is not built in one moment, it is built through divine timing. And sometimes God waits until the exact right second to reveal why everything happened the way it did. And that is why this message found you today, because God knew there would be a moment when your heart needed confirmation that He is still working in your life, even when you cannot feel Him, even when you cannot hear Him, and even when nothing around you looks different yet. Because faith begins where explanation ends, and the fact that you are still searching, still hoping, still listening, still believing, even after everything you have faced, already proves that something inside you refuses to quit, and that something is not weakness, that something is purpose calling your name. And the truth is, God never brings someone this far just to abandon them halfway through the journey. He never allows a soul to keep fighting this long without preparing something meaningful ahead. And maybe you thought this message appeared randomly. Maybe you thought this was just another ordinary moment in your day. But heaven already scheduled this encounter before you even woke up this morning. Because there are times when God speaks through people, there are times when He speaks through silence, and there are times when He speaks through unexpected messages that appear exactly when your heart needs them most. And today is one of those moments. Because something is about to shift inside you. Something is about to awaken inside your spirit. Something is about to remind you that you were never meant to live an ordinary life controlled by fear, doubt, or delay. You were chosen for something intentional, something meaningful, something that required strength, patience, and faith long before you even understood why your journey felt different from everyone around you. and if your life has ever felt slower, harder, or more confusing than others, it is not because you were forgotten. It is because you were being prepared differently, because God does not prepare everyone the same way. Some people are trained through comfort, but chosen people are trained through endurance. And if you are still here, still breathing, still believing, still searching today, then that means your preparation season is not over. Your story is still unfolding, and your purpose is still moving toward you, even if you cannot see it yet. And the reason this message reached you today is because heaven wanted to remind you that what is coming next in your life will make sense of everything you survived before this moment. And one day, you will look back and realize this was not coincidence. This was confirmation that God was guiding your steps the entire time, even when the path looked uncertain, even when the timing felt delayed, and even when nobody else understood why you kept moving forward anyway. Because destiny does not begin when everything becomes clear. Destiny begins when you decide to keep trusting God even when nothing makes sense. And the fact that you are listening right now proves your story is still being written by a higher plan that has never lost sight of you, even for a second. Sparkles. There is something happening in your life right now that you may not fully understand yet, but heaven understands it perfectly, because the confusion you are feeling is not a mistake, and the delay you are facing is not punishment, and the silence you are walking through is not abandonment. Because when God begins to shift a person's destiny, he often removes clarity before he reveals purpose. And that is exactly why you found this message at this exact moment, not yesterday and not tomorrow, but right now, because heaven knew there would come a point where your strength would begin to feel smaller than your questions, and your hope would begin to feel quieter than your fear, and your patience would begin to feel heavier than your faith. And in that exact moment, God prepared a reminder for you that you are still being guided even when you cannot see the road ahead. And the reason your journey has felt different from everyone else's journey is because your calling is different. And the reason doors closed that you prayed would open is because they were never meant to carry the weight of your future. And the reason certain people walked away from you, even when you loved them deeply, is because they were not assigned to the season you are stepping into now. And sometimes God removes what feels comfortable because He is protecting what's coming next. And sometimes He delays what you want because He is preparing something stronger than what you imagined. And sometimes He allows silence because He is teaching you how to trust His presence without needing constant reassurance. And if you look closely at your life, you will begin to notice that every struggle you survived actually shaped a strength inside you that you did not know you were building. And every disappointment that once made you question yourself actually protected you from a direction that would have limited your purpose. And every lonely moment that made you wonder if anyone truly understood you was quietly creating a deeper connection between you and the voice of God that speaks strongest in stillness. And that is why this moment right now matters more than you realize, because something inside you is waking up again. Something inside you that almost gave up is breathing again. Something inside you that felt forgotten is starting to believe again. And that is not coincidence. That is confirmation that God never stopped working behind the scenes, even when nothing around you seemed to move. And even when you thought your prayers were unanswered, heaven was rearranging situations, shifting timing, redirecting relationships, and strengthening your spirit, so that when the right opportunity finally arrives, you will not only recognize it, but you will be ready to step into it without fear. Because the truth is, God never sends a calling without preparing the person first, and He never places a promise in your heart without already building the path that leads toward it. And right now, even if everything feels uncertain, you are standing closer to a breakthrough than you think, closer to clarity than you realize, closer to restoration than you expected, and closer to purpose than you imagined. Because God does not guide people randomly, He guides them intentionally. And the fact that you are still here, still searching, still believing, even after everything you have faced, is proof that something greater is already unfolding in your life. And one day, very soon, you will look back at this exact season that once confused you, and you will Realize it was never a season of loss, it was a season of preparation. It was never a season of delay, it was a season of alignment. It was never a season of silence, it was a season where God was quietly positioning you exactly where you needed to be, so that when the next chapter begins, you will finally understand why you had to walk through everything that tried to stop you, but never succeeded, because your story was always meant to continue. And your purpose was always meant to rise in your future, was always meant to unfold at the perfect moment God planned long before you ever knew this day would come. And what most people never realize is that when God becomes silent in your life, it is often because He is working in places you cannot see, yet shaping doors you have not reached, yet arranging conversations you have not heard yet, and aligning people who are still walking toward your future while you are standing in the middle of what feels like delay, but is actually divine positioning, because God never wastes silence, He uses it like a hidden workshop where your strength is rebuilt, your patience is stretched, your faith is purified, and your purpose is sharpened until the version of you that walks into the next season is not weak, confused, and uncertain, but strong, focused, and unshakable. And maybe right now you feel like nothing is moving. Maybe right now you are praying the same prayer every night. Maybe right now you are asking heaven why the answer has not come yet. But what if the silence you fear is actually protection? What if God is keeping something away from you because He sees what you cannot see? What if the closed door in front of you is the very thing that is saving your life from the wrong path, the wrong person, the wrong timing, or the wrong decision? Because sometimes God's silence is not rejection, sometimes it is redirection. And the truth is, there are moments when heaven becomes quiet, not because God stepped away from you, but because He stepped ahead of you, preparing something bigger than what you asked for, something deeper than what you imagined, something stronger than what you expected. And if God answered every prayer immediately, you would never become the person strong enough to carry the blessing He is preparing for you right now, because some blessings require transformation before they arrive. And that transformation always happens in the silence, not in the spotlight, not in the applause, not in the celebration, but in the waiting, in the questioning, in the nights when nobody else understands what you are feeling, and still you choose to trust Him anyway. And that choice right there, that quiet decision to keep believing when nothing is changing, is one of the most powerful acts of faith a person can make, because faith is not proven when everything is working. Faith is proven when nothing is working and you still refuse to give up. And maybe that is exactly where you are today, standing in a place where answers feel far away and progress feels invisible and hope feels fragile. But what you cannot see is that heaven is not inactive, heaven is moving in ways your eyes cannot measure, your ears cannot hear, and your timeline cannot predict, because God does His deepest work behind the scenes. He prepares miracles in silence. He prepares restoration in silence. He prepares breakthroughs in silence. And the same silence that feels uncomfortable today will become the evidence tomorrow that God was working the entire time, even when you thought nothing was happening. And one day you will look back at this exact season, this exact struggle, this exact waiting period, and you will realize that it was not empty, it was not meaningless, it was not forgotten, it was preparation, because God was building something inside you that could never be built any other way. He was teaching you how to trust Him without signs, how to believe without proof, how to walk forward without clarity. And those lessons are what separate temporary faith from unshakable faith, because anyone can believe when a path is visible, but only the chosen keep walking when the path disappears. And if you are still here, still praying, still hoping, still holding on, even after everything you have faced, then that is not weakness. That is evidence that God is strengthening you for something greater than you can imagine right now. And the silence you are experiencing is not the end of your story. It is the middle of your transformation. It is the moment before the shift. It is the pause before the breakthrough. It is the preparation before the blessing. And the reason you feel this message so deeply right Now is because something inside your spirit already knows that your waiting season is not permanent, your struggle is not pointless, and your silence is not empty. It is sacred, it is intentional, and it is leading you somewhere you never expected but always needed. There is something you must understand right now before doubt speaks louder than faith in your heart and before fear convinces you that nothing is happening in your life, because the silence you are walking through at this very moment is not empty space but hidden construction. And the truth is that God does his deepest work where human eyes cannot see and where human logic cannot explain, because the greatest transformations never begin with noise. They begin with quiet preparation. And if you are still here, still watching, still searching, still holding on, even when answers have not arrived yet, then this is not coincidence. This is confirmation that heaven has not forgotten your name and that your waiting season is not punishment but positioning, because God often removes distractions before he releases direction, and he often slows your steps before he reveals your destiny. And what feels like delay right now is actually divine alignment happening behind doors you cannot open by yourself. And there are things God is protecting you from that you cannot yet recognize. And there are blessings being prepared for you that you are not yet strong enough to carry, which is why this silence feels longer than expected, but necessary for your future. Because when God prepares something big, he prepares you first. And sometimes preparation feels like confusion. Sometimes preparation feels like loneliness. Sometimes preparation feels like rejection. But preparation is never wasted, and every closed door you cried about was actually guarding the entrance to something greater that only opens at the right moment and not before. And this is why the silence you are experiencing right now is sacred, even though it feels uncomfortable. Because heaven is not ignoring you, heaven is shaping you. And the truth most people never realize is that God trusts those he prepares in silence more than those who only move when they hear immediate answers. And if he allowed everything to happen quickly, you would never discover the strength he placed inside you before the beginning of your journey, and you would never recognize how powerful your faith really is when it keeps moving forward without visible proof. And right now, your faith is growing in ways you cannot measure, but heaven can see, and there are angels working in places your prayers already reached, even though your eyes have not yet seen the results. And there are connections forming, opportunities shifting, and obstacles moving quietly out of your future path, even while it feels like nothing is changing, because silence is not inactivity, silence is invisible progress. And what God starts in quiet, he reveals in glory at the right time. And that time is always perfect, even when it does not match your expectations. And the reason this message reached you today is because your season is shifting sooner than you think, and heaven wants your heart ready before your blessing arrives, so you do not mistake preparation for abandonment or testing for rejection, because what is coming into your life next will require a stronger version of you than the one you were yesterday. And God never releases a greater assignment before building a greater foundation inside you first. And the truth is, the moment you almost gave up was the exact moment heaven was preparing your breakthrough behind the scenes. And if you stayed strong through confusion, through unanswered prayers, through nights when your heart questioned everything, yet your spirit kept believing, then you are already closer than you realize to the turning point that will change everything around you. And the silence that once made you doubt will soon become the evidence that God was working all along, even when you could not hear him speaking. And one day, very soon, you will look back at this exact season not with pain but with gratitude, because you will finally see that every delay protected you, every silence strengthened you, every closed door redirected you, and every unanswered prayer prepared you for something bigger than what you originally asked for. And when that moment arrives, you will understand why heaven stayed quiet for so long, not because God left you, but because he was building something too powerful to rush and too important to release before its time. And that is why today, instead of losing hope, you are being invited to hold on tighter than before, because silence is not the end of your story, it is the beginning of the chapter where Everything starts changing in ways you never imagined but always needed. Listen carefully because what you are experiencing right now is not delay, it is not rejection, and it is not abandonment. It is divine positioning. And the silence you are walking through at this exact moment may actually be the clearest evidence that something powerful has already started moving in your life behind the scenes. Because when God prepares something ordinary, He speaks quickly. But when He prepares something destiny shifting, He often becomes quiet so your faith grows strong, enough to carry what is coming next. And the truth most people never realize is that the seasons where nothing seems to change are actually the seasons where everything begins to change invisibly first. Because transformation in God's timing always starts beneath the surface before it appears in front of your eyes, which means the prayers you thought were ignored were actually being processed. The doors you thought were closed were actually being guarded. And the waiting you thought was wasted was actually shaping the strength you will soon need to walk into the blessing that once would have overwhelmed you if it arrived too early. And maybe this explains why certain opportunities disappeared right when you were expecting them to open, why certain people slowly walked away without explanation, why certain plans collapsed even after you worked so hard for them. Because sometimes God removes what your emotions want in order to protect what your destiny needs. And the silence you are feeling right now is not empty space, but sacred preparation space where your character is being strengthened, your vision is being sharpened, your patience is being stretched, and your spirit is being aligned with something larger than what you originally asked for. Because many people pray for blessings, but they are not ready for responsibility. They pray for purpose, but they are not prepared for pressure. They pray for elevation, but they are not equipped for endurance. And God knows that if He answered too soon, the blessing could break you instead of build you, which is why silence becomes the training ground where faith stops depending on feelings and starts depending on trust. If you think about your life honestly, you will realize that the moments that shaped you the most were not the moments when everything worked perfectly, but the moments when nothing made sense yet somehow you kept moving forward anyway. Because those were the moments your faith stopped being an idea and started becoming your identity. And maybe right now you are standing in one of those defining seasons again where you cannot see the outcome, yet you feel something deep inside telling you not to give up, not to quit, not to walk away. Because something is still being prepared for you, even if you cannot recognize it yet. And what makes this season so powerful is that God is not just preparing your future blessing, but He is preparing you to recognize it when it arrives. Because many people miss miracles not because miracles never came, but because they arrived in unexpected forms that only spiritually prepared eyes could recognize. Which means your waiting is not punishment but positioning, your silence is not absence but alignment, and your struggle is not the end of your story but the construction phase of a chapter that will soon make sense in ways you cannot imagine yet. And there is a reason you are still here, still breathing, still believing, still searching, still listening. Because if your purpose was finished, your path would already be closed. But the fact that you are still moving forward, even through confusion, is proof that something ahead of you still needs your faith, your strength, and your courage. And one day, you will look back at this exact season and realize that what felt like silence was actually strategy. What felt like delay was actually direction. And what felt like emptiness was actually preparation for something bigger than you ever expected. So do not lose hope. Now, because the quiet season you are walking through today may be the very season that proves tomorrow that God was working for you the entire time, even when you thought nothing was happening. Before you scroll away or let doubt convince you that nothing is changing in your life right now, understand this deeply because what you are walking through at this very moment is not random confusion and it is not wasted waiting, but a sacred transition season where God is quietly rearranging things you cannot yet see and aligning people you have not yet met and closing doors you were never meant to walk through, so that when the right door finally opens, it will not just feel like progress, but it will feel like destiny unfolding exactly on time. And the reason everything feels slower than expected is because heaven never rushes when something eternal is being prepared for you. Because quick blessings often change circumstances, but delayed blessings change identity. And God is not only interested in giving you something new, He is shaping you into someone new who can carry what is coming without losing it. And maybe you noticed how certain friendships started fading without explanation. And certain plans stopped working even though you tried harder than before, and certain opportunities disappeared just when you thought they were finally yours. But what you called loss was actually protection, and what you called silence was actually strategy, because God sometimes removes what feels good in the present to protect what will be great in the future. And right now, even though your eyes cannot see movement, heaven is already setting connections and motion. Conversations are being prepared, doors are being unlocked, and timing is being perfected for your arrival into the next chapter of your life. And one day, very soon, you will look back at this quiet, confusing season and realize it was never empty at all. But it was the exact place where your strength was built, your patience was deepened, your faith was tested, and your future was quietly being assembled piece by piece in ways only God could arrange. So if your heart feels tired tonight and your mind keeps asking how much, longer, remember this truth with confidence and peace, that when God prepares something truly life-changing, He never announces it early, He prepares it carefully and reveals it suddenly. And when it finally arrives, you will understand why nothing else was allowed to work before it.